America is the home of freedom and prosperity. The U.S. Constitution has firmly cemented these rights, among them being religious freedom. Time and time again, the Supreme Court has held up these critical liberties for our nation. The same could not be said 7,000 miles from our border. With the advancement of mobile technology, China's human rights abuses have been recorded and documented, producing alarming results to the rest of the world. Hello, my name is Vicki Hartzler, Congresswoman representing Missouri's 4th District in the United States House of Representatives. Welcome to our closing chapter in our series detailing the threats posed by China. We're glad you're with us for this segment covering human rights abuses. Let's be clear from the start. China continues to commit vast human rights abuses against its own people and is committing crimes against humanity. It is estimated that since 2017, as many as 1.8 million people have been arbitrarily detained and forced into mass internment camps for indefinite periods and subjected to political indoctrination, forced renunciations of faith, forced labor, torture, and other severe human rights abuses. In these mass internment camps, there exists an emerging forced labor system, as confirmed by the testimony of camp survivors, satellite imagery, and official documents from the Chinese government. Goods produced with forced labor include textiles, electronics, food products, shoes, tea, and handicrafts. These products are making their way into U.S. markets and into the homes of American consumers. Government documents also show that beginning in 2016, authorities have carried out widespread, systematic forced sterilizations, abortions, and intrauterine device IUD insertions on ethnic minority women in Xinjiang at rates far higher than anywhere else in China. These abuses meet the legal definition of genocide, and on January 19, 2021, the U.S. Department of State formally declared that China is committing genocide and crimes against humanity. As you can tell, many of these abuses by China are centered around religious persecution. Sadly, religious freedom conditions in China have continued to deteriorate. The Chinese government has created a high-tech surveillance state, utilizing facial recognition and artificial intelligence to monitor religious minorities and everyday citizens across the country. Under President and Communist Party Secretary Xi Jinping, efforts by the Chinese government have further intensified the censusization of religion, which is a campaign that aims to bring religion in China under closer official control and in line with officially sanctioned interpretations of Chinese culture. It has been reported that China is also rewriting and will issue a version of the Bible with the correct understanding of the text according to Chinese Communist Party. Authorities have expanded the Sinicization campaign to target not only religions perceived as foreign, such as Islam and Christianity, but also Chinese Buddhism, Taoism, and folk religious beliefs. In February 2020, the new regulation for religious groups, which requires all religious groups to obtain permission for their activities, went into effect. There are credible reports of Chinese authorities raiding house churches, removing crosses, confiscating religious symbols, installing surveillance cameras on church property, pressuring churches to sing songs of the Chinese Communist Party, and display the national flag during community worship, forcing churches to replace images of Jesus Christ or the Virgin Mary with pictures of President Xi Jinping, and banning children and students from attending church services. How do they achieve this? Through intrusive monitoring threats, brute force, and coercive population control methods. Genocide is defined as the deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group. The Chinese Communist Party is engaging in coercive population control methods in Xinjiang that falls under this definition. But these methods are more widespread than just Xinjiang. Local family planning officials are instructed to conduct IUD insertions, abortions, and sterilizations to prevent and control what they call illegal pregnancies. It's clear. China's coercive population control policies and its preference for males are human rights violations that are fueling other dangerous practices such as human trafficking and illegal adoptions. Inside China, at the hands of the nation's government, there are reports of an involuntary or prisoner-based organ transplant system. Many activists and organizations have accused the CCP of involuntarily harvesting organs from prisoners of conscience, especially members of Falun Gong. A paper published in the Medical Research Journal entitled BMC Medical Ethics in November of 2019 raised concerns about the Chinese government's transparency of data regarding its organ transplant system. According to the authors, China's standards for public provision of its transplant data differ significantly from elsewhere. None of the official organ transplant registries are publicly accessible. The paper claimed that the Chinese government may have even falsified annual statistics on organ donation numbers in China. Observers suggested that this may be an indicator that involuntary organ removals continue to take place in China, despite official assertions to the contrary. We must get to the bottom of these horrific crimes against humanity. Throughout this video, we've detailed the astonishing and horrendous human rights abuses done by China and its Communist Party. Now, what can be done and what has already been completed to hold China accountable and ensure these tragedies end? Well, let's outline this. To start, the United States must shed light and sanction China for these abuses. We must also call on companies to stop sourcing from Xinjiang, where almost 2 million people are in internment camps. U.S. companies must act to ensure their products and services are not aiding in the arbitrary detention and torture of innocent people. The United States must also advocate for political prisoners and prisoners of conscience. Each year, the Congressional Executive Commission on China, the CECC, issues a comprehensive report on China's human rights violations. I'm proud to be a commissioner on the CECC, and I'm working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to bring these issues to the forefront of national conversations. As a result of these efforts, my CECC colleagues and I were collectively sanctioned by the Chinese government. You can view our most recent report by going to cecc.gov. From a legislative front, we must work in Congress to enact laws to hold China accountable. Last year, the United States House of Representatives passed the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, which creates a rebuttable presumption of forced labor in Xinjiang. Sadly, this legislation did not pass in the Senate before the 116th Congress finished its legislative business. As a CCAC Commissioner, I am once again an original co-sponsor of the legislation for the 117th Congress, and I'll work to ensure its passage. I'm also currently working on legislation that will address state-sanctioned violence against women in Xinjiang. My legislation will condemn the genocide happening in Xinjiang and prohibit high-level Chinese officials involved in the state-sanctioned genocide from coming to the United States, among other important actions. Another initiative, the Defending Freedoms Project, allows members of Congress to adopt a prisoner of conscience and advocate on their behalf. I've adopted several Chinese Christian prisoners through the Defending Freedoms Project. One of these is Pastor Wang Yi, who led the Early Rain Covenant Church in Chengdu, Xinjiang Province. Wang's congregation, one of the most prominent unregistered churches in the country, was shut down during a series of government raids. He was sentenced to 9 years in prison for inciting to subvert state power and illegal business operations. This is the longest prison term issued against a house church pastor in a decade, according to World Magazine. Another is Zhang Shouji, a 3 self-church pastor from Nanli County in China's central Henan province. He was detained on November 16, 2013, after a series of land disputes with local authorities. Zhang and more than 20 members of his congregation were charged with gathering a crowd to disrupt the public order. On July 4, 2014, Zhang was sentenced to 12 years in prison. China must release these pastors and respect human rights and freedom of religion. We must do everything we can to free these individuals and put a stop to these religious persecutions. Throughout this series, we have highlighted the multifaceted abuses at the hands of China and the Communist Party, including military threats, China's use of economic manipulation to increase power, China's soft power strategies, and this installment's look at China's human rights abuses. These are just a few reasons we should be concerned about China's rise and do everything in our power to counter their malign and destructive plans. Now is the time for the U.S. to advance our leadership in the world and hold the banner of freedom high. We must ensure America stays strong militarily, morally, and economically. We must reach out to others, building coalitions among the free world, and take steps to protect our intellectual capital and defend our way of life. We cannot sit back and blindly allow China to buy favor around the world and steal our secrets. Now is the time to lead the world with courage, virtue, and innovation. My name is Vicki Hartzler, representing Missouri's 4th Congressional District, and I thank you for watching this 4-part series. I hope you found this series informative and engaging. Should you have questions on anything we've previously discussed, please send an email to hartzlerquestions@mail.house.gov, and we'll get back with you. And I especially want to thank my team for helping me put this series together. Your talents, time, and dedication made it possible. Together, my office and I will continue to expose the threats from China and stand strong for America and freedom. God bless.